we're actually live, and we have been apparently for a couple of seconds. But hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for coming to our webinar. I know we haven't had one in a while, but it's with great pleasure that we have our guest today. So this is Martin Yap. He's an old friend. Actually, we used to carpool to Cempaka together. And he is so Martin Yap, class of 1999, Rumah Sladang, Best House. Okay.
Yes.
And so we are really happy to have him here to talk on our topic today, which is taking care of your elderly. So we know that in our community, we don't just have students, we also have parents, grandparents, and we also have a lot of teachers who have aging parents as well. And so we want to do our best, and especially during this MCO period, to take care of them as best we can. So we have Martin Yap here, who is the founder of CARE Concierge, actually with a couple of other Cempakans. And we invited him to come talk about his journey into entrepreneurship and into taking care of the elderly population. And we'll just sort of let him go. And please tell us about yourself and your journey to Cempaka, and tell us about what you guys do now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Val. Thanks for inviting me back here, and welcome fellow Cempakans. It's been actually a really long time since I've connected back, since high school actually, and those were really great times for me. Maybe I'll just maybe tell you what I've been doing since then, right? So as Val, you mentioned that after high school, I actually went to study to become an architect. So I'm actually an architect by training. I went to Australia, I went to Sydney to do that. But over the periods of working, doing design of international commercial offices and things like that, I actually came back to Malaysia about 10 years ago to actually help out recently with my father on the retirement project. And since then, I've actually gone towards more senior care, senior living, because it was a big passion of mine. And then just a few years ago, I actually started CARE Concierge. I was one of the co-founders. And I'm the CEO of CARE Concierge, right? Together with fellow Cempakan as well, Justin Yap, and also Leroy Chiam. Actually, those are two Cempakans from my school, from my class actually. And then we actually set up the business as well as a nursing home, a premier nursing home center. So what's very interesting about the journey is that it's gone through. It's a very not so typical journey, because I started out as a designer architect, and now I've actually gone into entrepreneurship. And as a business, we've been doing quite well. And I guess I can mention a little bit about the company. We actually provide nurses, therapists, and caregivers to the home, part of home care for post-hospitalization recovery and elder care. And we're really taking care of the seniors and elderly, and also using technology and using a proprietary tech app that we developed ourselves. So just recently, we were the Alibaba top 40 Jumpstarter startup in the world. So that was a good validation. And then last year, we also were the World Digital Startup Disruptor of the Year winner. So I guess that is also part of the entrepreneur journey that I've gone through. And it's been quite exciting. So that's a bit of the introduction there, I guess. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Can you tell us about sort of like what you guys do at CARE Concierge, and can you sort of like transition that into sort of like what we can do at home also? So thinking about all our students and teachers who have families and aged family members living with them, how we can best sort of like take care, and what things in particular during this MCO period that are sort of like important for us to keep in mind and to look out for.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the reason we actually started this company also was that because we also had a lot of family members that were we had to take care of. In fact, my grandma she had a stroke when I was young, and it was very difficult for us to actually find a care or a professional caregiver to come. It was actually quite a big toll on the family. I always remember that as I was going along the journey about what gave us purpose and reason, and this was one of it. And Justin as well, he also had that same feeling, because he also had family members that had that. And so the question was that, okay, if we wanted to do a service, if the service is not available, then that's one of the reasons why we did it. So we started this company for the real reason is that we wanted to have professional caregivers, and to have a solution for those family members at home. One of the biggest things, and I think during the MCO, people realize that is that sometimes our parents, or our seniors, as they grow older, they actually need a lot of care, right? They also need not just the physical care but the mental care, and sometimes we kind of forget that. And so one of the things also is that as the world continues to be busy, even pre the COVID and things like that, we've always had our own life as to go through. And when suddenly something happens, like for example, if there's one of our parents gets unfortunately gets sick, or they go through what we call, as you age, you have things like dementia and Alzheimer's. It actually takes a big toll on the family members too. So our goal was actually to create a platform where we'll actually train the nurses. We actually train caregivers, professional caregivers that we actually, it could be anyone that's actually passionate about taking care of their parents or an elderly, and then we give them the skill sets to do that, and so then they can then go to the home. And it's very similar to things like Uber and Grab, where we do an on-demand system that you actually have an app, and then you actually control to say, okay, what has the caregivers will enter the information of how they're taking care of the elderly at the home, so everyone knows what's going on. And it also means like they can check on the medication, they can see whether or not they've done some exercises or activities. So it gives you that whole technology experience to actually help out those that need help at home. So that's how we've done that. And then at the same time, concurrently, we actually then decided to innovate and actually build retirement facilities. So what we've gone besides that is actually gone into development of what we call premier assisted living homes, right? Where if you've ever seen what a nursing home is, in Malaysia, there's not many options available. They're kind of, for many generations, it's considered a squalid environment that you don't want to send your parents there. And so what we did was that we want to try to convert it. We got to create something beautiful that's very much like a resort environment. It's comfortable. And of course, we have technology behind it so that you can monitor, if anything happens, you've got a panic button, it calls into the system, and then we can send our nurses and caregivers to help them. So right now in our platform, we actually got about 1,500 nurses, therapists, and caregivers that we can deploy across nationwide, across Malaysia, on both our services. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's quite a lot to mention, I guess.
Okay, great. Sorry. Yeah. And okay, can you also then tell us a bit? So, for those of us who are taking care of sort of like our parents or grandparents at home, what are some of the sort of key things that we can do, for example, in order to, in more of a preventive sort of aspect, right? So instead of waiting till somebody has a fall, or waiting till something happens, or somebody really sort of develops, sort of like full-scale dementia or Alzheimer's, which I think is very great for everybody. What are things that we can do, parents and grandparents, to support them, so that we try to mitigate these things, or mitigate the occasional opportunity for falls and these events that can be very sort of like catastrophic once you're in older age?
Yeah. So that's a very good point. I think it's important to firstly understand that, as the elderly and seniors, they are a bit as they continue aging, their body changes as well. So therefore, they are more fragile. It's also about being patient. Sometimes we mention about when I mention things like Alzheimer's and dementia, right? These are things that onslaught. Sometimes that happens to a lot of the seniors as they go. And the way you look at it is that they start to forget things. They might repeat certain things, and sometimes they don't able to sleep at night. So it's important as family to actually acknowledge that, because at the end of the day, these are signs and symptoms that you would not usually say a normal person might feel. An active person. So it's about being patient. It's also about understanding. It's important to actually spend more time with them, especially during the MCO period. If you see that, sometimes it's also about engaging in many ways, right? Parents and grandparents, they really love their children or the kids or the grandkids. So it's about spending more time with them, and also that gives them a lot of pleasure, right? In terms of being active, and also stimulating their mind, right? At the end of the day, one of the biggest issues is that we always see a lot of the the people that we take care of, that they are not very much engaged at home, right? They just watch TV, and they're left by themselves. It's very important to check on them too. That is also why we've actually come and done more activities. We've actually created a daycare center, so that it's almost like a social club. So then all the family members can actually come and engage, right? So that's also very important, to notice the signs. Yeah. And also the other thing to note is that even as such, sometimes it's also difficult for the family members. If let's say they're going through some post-op, or they've gone through a stroke or anything. So it's also very important to notice yourself as well, because it can be very stressful, that to deal with all these situations. So always share with other people. If you need help and things like that, to look at the community. So the community is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand what community being sort of like very key, right? And I think that it can really be a struggle, when I think somebody in your home needs a lot of extra care, and I think it can be very, I think just psychologically very difficult for grandparents and people who are older as well, because they've really led like such incredible lives, and they've done so much for us, and they've really sort of like contributed to the nation, to the family, and all that. And then to the point where to a certain extent your body can't really keep up. And I think that, I mean, with my grandmother, for example, when she had a stroke,
Yeah.
she lost the ability to speak. So
Yeah.
she always
Yeah.
like a good lady before that, and so I think it was really really difficult for her, and it was really hard for us to watch it. She was so frustrated all the time, which also made it very stressful, and for the rest of the family too. And so like can you sort of like tell us a little bit more? I mean, what kind of support can people get? What kind of support should people be looking for? I think like there's also this sense that like if you send your parents to an old folks home or something, and you don't even want to call it an old folks home really, like facility like that is very. I mean, especially in Asia, that's obviously not something that anybody really really wants to do. So what are other ways? What are other supports that we can perhaps get in our own homes? For example, that still keeps sort of like Asian family values very much at heart, but then also helps everybody lead a better life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's also one of the reasons we did these services, right? I think it's the same experiences that you had with my grandma, right? She used to be a headmistress herself, and then when the thing happened with the stroke, she in fact had two strokes. That whole suddenly she was quite, she couldn't move much. She used to be so independent. She was going out on her own, and suddenly her whole world had a total change, right? And so it's very important to keep that respect and dignity for the elderly, because they've actually gone through so many great experiences before, and they've got a lot to share. And suddenly when they're vulnerable, that's actually the most time that we need to take care of them. That is also the reason why we actually started with the facility, right? With our fellow Cempakans, we actually decided we cannot keep to the same keep to just having what we call dilapidated nursing home, that you kind of just dump your parents there, grandparents there, because those things, that is not the way society should be. We're actually there as the filial piety part of our community society is very important. So of course we also take a bit of a commercial approach about it, but it's important because then we can actually put out the services that we can for them. So that's why our places are very different. We actually designed it to be very much like a home, to be like more community based. In fact, we've actually just launched another product, which is a daycare center, right? One of the centers that we created is actually like a club. So we are talking about the traditional way for we talk about grandparents and things like that. They like to go to the coffee shop, right? The coffee Chiam and things like that. It's actually a very important part for them to socialize, because that's where they meet up. They even sometimes they talk about politics, and then they have an opinion about the neighbors and things like that. That's actually really good, because having those things on a day-to-day basis means that they have some purpose, or they have a reason to go there, right? So all our facilities, and even like the daycare centers, is where they come in. They do things that are a little bit more than just the normal. Let's do some coloring and things like that. We try to do it a little bit more aspirational. So, for example, they'll actually get into doing things like bonsai art, right? They do therapy. You want to do espresso cake, that kind of thing, right? Why not do that? So the key is actually about giving empowerment, because at the end of the day, life does not stop after you retire. Life doesn't stop at all. You just continue and you're always growing, right? I think the important thing is always to have a growth mentality, and it's the same thing with our parents and our grandparents. As you continue going on, they always must find new ways. Like if you're using a Zoom call or Google Meets and things like that, they want to be part of that as well. So that's how we actually design our centers. That's also why we make sure that when we send our caregivers to the home or all our services, it's actually really to empower them. That they don't have to worry about the parts that if let's say we do the bathing, the feeding, the cleaning, and all this, they are then empowered to do other stuff as well. The other part of the empowerment is actually on the workforce as well, right? We're actually trying to push. There are many aspects to it, but for example, it's just like the giving people options, right? If you want to do something with purpose or actually taking care of other people, that's why this industry is so important. That we actually need more people to come in. It's a very new industry in the first place, and it needs to be innovated. So maybe for students and the Cempaka students out there, right? If you're looking for an industry or how to look at it, plans change all the time. I mean, I started off as an architect, right? And then when I saw the needs, or I brought in the fellow Cempakans to come in, they were also very passionate about making changes to an industry, and we had no experiences whatsoever. Just to give you a little bit of a backstory to the other fellow Cempakans, this nursing home thing or caregiving is actually more. You would think that a doctor or a health professional would do it, and none of us are actually professionals there. But what we did, of course, we worked with a lot of health professionals and fellow Cempakans that are doctors as well. But the founders here, we actually come from tech background. I'm an architect. No one actually comes from a real estate as well. So we really saw that the services were not available. That's when we decided, hey, look, this is the time we need to do something about it. We cannot continue to have this kind of environment and say, if anyone's been to an old folks home, oh, this is how society is. It's never like that. It's always changed by people looking outwards and saying, hey, why can't I do it better? And the question comes about is that, why can't it be like that, right? And most of the time, when you ask someone that question, the answer is like, oh, it's been like that all the time. So that kind of answer is not really the right answer to give. So that's when we saw the opportunity to go in. And so the industry itself, I've also moved sideways, but coming back to the industry itself, we find that this industry is something for the future because as the population, Malaysia is going to be an aging population by 2030. That's a short time. That's 50% of the population. And the whole world is actually going through this senior, the aging. And I think as you look at it during especially this COVID-19 outbreak, the elderly and seniors are the ones that suffer most, but there's a big population of them that needs to be cared for. Who's going to care for them, right? So we can't use our legacy systems. That is also why we need to train professional caregivers, look at health professionals coming in. But at the same time, we can also redefine their role. So when we talk about, when I always mention about care professionals or professional caregivers, it's actually a very new industrial role where they're not nurses, nor are they helpers in the home, right? They're actually there to focus on for example, the cognitive or the mental stimulation of the seniors. It's about giving them some companionship, helping up them to run errands and groceries. So they're almost like an assistant per se, and their role is so important. And so that's also why we actually went into to our education part too, right? Where we actually then partnered with another university. So we partnered with Utah, and to actually come up with a specialized elder care program to train caregivers and build an industry for that. So we see there are many innovations here, but the important thing is that we do it because we're very passionate about making changes, and I think we should approach everything like that to solve all the solutions as we go along. Yeah, there are many problems to solve. Yeah.
I think that's great, and I love. You guys talk about how even though you are not, healthcare professionals yourself, you're taking sort of like this design approach, sort of like this design thinking or this tech approach. So using the skills that you have, but applying it to an industry that you have a lot of passion for, right? So even if you don't necessarily have the background, there's lots of people with that expertise that you can then tap into, which you can then sort of like use to build something that is really meaningful, right? So you saw like the need in the community, and then you sort of also see this need in the future, right? So I always tell our students that like the kinds of jobs that are going to be available to them when they graduate are jobs that, for example, you can't even imagine right now. So
Yes.
like the world just is changing so much every day. And for example, like currently, sort of like the pandemic that we're in, the world is going to be completely different in like a year. Okay, so not even talking about when they graduate, right? So
Even
like
now, yes.
yes, and then like, but what we kind of always need to do is we kind of like need to adapt to how the world is changing, and then constantly sort of finding out new needs, because these needs are the things that are gonna like come up that will be a surprise to everyone, and then find ways to solve those problems that emerge, right? So I mean,
Absolutely.
I love this approach to like entrepreneurship, and I also think that it's like super valuable to everyone, and that's how we like keep trying to solve problems, right? So I think that's great. Um, okay, and I also love what you talk about in terms of like we want to empower people, right? And I love your approach of choosing to empower the more senior people in our lives, right? Because they have all this expertise that we can learn from, and all of that. And so why we really want to like award them the dignity that they deserve, right? So never do anything that takes away from that. And so give them, continue to give them, but support them differently. So they'll need different support, right? And in order to be able to keep living lives of purpose, and dignity and all that stuff. And I think it's great that you guys do that. But what can our young people and like family members, what can we do sort of now? So because for I think a lot of us also have parents who are mostly okay. They're like pretty healthy and they're like pretty great. But that's now, it might very quickly change in like the next few years or something, and that is very frightening. I think few of us. Sort of like how can we prepare?
That's an interesting thing. I guess it's about awareness as well. I think. Besides giving your parents a hug and also making sure that you're taking care of them, I think it's just important to also note that there are different approaches to it, like how you could take care of them. One thing is, sometimes when you spend time with them, you actually figure out things better, or you kind of know how they are doing. Or what we can say is that learn certain of these skills. Yeah, maybe I should mention that. So, for example, the education part about teaching people to be caregivers is actually, in a way, a skill set that anyone should have, right? So, in fact, even our approach to it is that, the skill sets, like for example, so a caregiver's role, besides being cognitive, the range of motion exercises, bathing, feeding, cleaning, we have a lot of people actually coming for our courses just to learn how they can actually do practical things. So that for example, if how do I transfer an elderly person or the family members up without hurting their back? Those are very tangible things that you can learn, so that you can help out grandma, grandpa, and then you can really take care of them if they need to. So those are very practical skills, and we actually do training for that. So and in a sense, one part of our training is that we actually do scenario-based learning. We actually built an app for this too. So it's also about learning. We've got video learnings from that, and we actually give badges to different skills. So it's a bit like the Boy Scouts of Girl Guides. You get a badge for being able to washing your hands properly, right? Transferring, able to do all these activities. So at the end of the day, the goal is actually to gamify a little bit of that, but also to say, these are actually valuable skills that the society actually doesn't recognize, right? It's not just about mentally just talking about it, but also being able to be the carer for the family. So that's one way to contribute. There are many ways to contribute. Joining or enrolling your parents or going out with them for activities and things like that. And it depends, because there are so many different segments. Like if I talk about elder care, right, or senior care, you go from the independent, there's assisted living, to your maybe it's a bedridden. There's so many different scenarios. So it's just about being aware about it, and then also understanding that there are a lot of options available for them. Learning some of these skills. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing. I mean, if you guys are interested to even maybe we could do a field trip. You want to come and have a look at our senior care facilities, and we always give a lot of feedback, because one thing about is awareness of how they live. One of the things our centers is that it's also we actually encourage a lot of young people to come. So grandkids come. We actually have an Xbox there. We actually have a big pond. We actually grow our own. We actually harvest fishes there, right? So we actually even grow our own plants there. So it's all about having things like the permaculture, getting the elderly there, and it's a combination of the young and the old. I think that's very important. Yeah. So yeah, just an open invitation for you guys to come over.
Okay, great. That'd be awesome when we can all gather in.
Yeah, when the time comes in, yes. But yeah.
Okay, and
then what? Yeah. No, sorry, I was just mentioning. That's one of the senior part. But going back to there was a earlier part about talking about the entrepreneurship and things like that, right? About pivoting and things like that. So just to kind of show how, because as a business, right, that's also one thing as Cempakans are going out. A lot of Cempakans are actually into creating a lot of innovative things, right? So I'm also working in partnerships. Even Jackson, I mentioned, he's in, I think, Tiga's Pharmacy. We have a really good collective of Cempakans that work together on different innovative products out there. But even ourselves, like just mentioning about from elderly care and seniors, because we have nurses, one of the things that we're doing right now is actually helping a lot of companies and employees go back to office. And so we actually, funny enough, I've actually just came back from my team helping to service what we call swab tests, the PCR tests for corporate. So there is a big need for actually to get back the country back into service, and our nurses are actually deployed to actually help out to give this test out to make sure that. So we're doing our part to make sure that everyone is safe. Yeah. So, but this opportunity in a way just came out because there was a big need, right? So we adjust accordingly. So yeah, that was the point I wanted to mention. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think another question sort of like related. So, in the time of COVID, sort of like now, I think we all know that people who are older or who have comorbidities or who have existing conditions are more vulnerable, right? So, what are that we need to do in order to sort of like prevent us, and especially since people are allowed to go out a little bit more these days, you can go out and do more things, industries are open, a lot of people have returned to work. What are some of the things that we really need to keep in mind in order to make sure that everybody at home is safe?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it comes to practicality, right? In terms of us being responsible, this social distancing is one of the more important things to do. So you just have to be very much remembered that the elderly and seniors are very much vulnerable. So even our centers as well, we actually sorry, pivot a little bit. We actually do a lockdown, so people don't actually come to visit, and we just use video technology for the elderly to see that. So for those that are staying at home, I think it's very important to make sure that, of course, you sanitize. You wash your hands properly. For 5 seconds, and then you got to make sure that you are quite aware that whatever you do, just be responsible, right? Do the right thing. Stay at home as much as possible during this period. That's also one of the reasons we have actually our centers, and we're actually going to open more centers this way, where we actually help to keep them safe, so that parents can actually, elderly can actually come to our centers, and then we actually make sure that the safety is there. They're kind of protected. We've got nurses there while the kids or children can go back to work or go to school. And when this period is finished, then they can come back. So this is one of the products that actually coming up. We are doing too. But practically, I think it's also just being about responsible, about knowing, keeping your hygiene and your distancing. I think that's important too. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think somebody, one of our teachers, Mr. Lukman, he has a question. Sort of like, what are ways that we, as members of the community, can sort of like, what are ways that we can help to sort of like contribute to your efforts, or what are ways that we, sort of like can make, I guess, life for more senior people better? I think it all sort of like layers of like.
So generally, I think it's important to reach out to people, or even or actively engage in the community. Being part of a society and getting them involved. Those kind of things are very important to do, or reach out to those that may be staying at home. A lot of seniors sometimes, they're just talking generally, right? They may have been forgotten sometimes, and depression sets in. So we know a lot of auntie uncles per se that from a perspective of if there are certain skills that they like to do. So for example, they do things like choir or symphony. They love to, even though they cannot sing or anything, we know for a fact that they really love to get involved in all these activities. So if you have something that you can get them involved in, that's one way to do it. You can always come over to our center as well. We're always looking for people to contribute. There's actually a lot of to be honest, there are actually a lot of other centers that requires people to come in to maybe just spend some time with the seniors. Actually, they really just want to be heard most of the time, right? At the end of the day, so many of them have so much experiences in the past that they just need to sit with them and they open up and make their day happy, right? So there are many ways to do it, but even just a simple thing as spending some time with the seniors to understand them and giving your time, is already a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's very nice. It is true. Every time I sit with some people, you always learn something new, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I also ask, sort of like in your entrepreneurship journey? I mean, I think it's like pretty incredible that you sort of like started this with Cempakans, from your class. Like it's
Yeah.
been a while, and it's really nice to see that those bonds sort of like last for so long, and that the network also then extends. Right? You said that you have partnerships, I think, with other or support from funding from other Cempakans as well, and I think that's really great.
Yeah.
But and in this sort of like journey of entrepreneurship, what would you say has been sort of like the most difficult thing? Can you tell us about some of the struggles?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so entrepreneurship is a very interesting thing. I think I got into it a little bit later. But what's interesting is it's a mindset thing because you never know what's the outcome at the end of the day, right? There's no playbook that tells you, if you work really hard, it's going to be successful. So you need to be almost like resilient. There'll be up and down days, right? And it's very cliche actually because if you go and ask most founders and I'm still learning, right, as we continue going on. So every day is kind of a learning journey, and then you just have to accept it. So the pain is actually sometimes the uncertainty, but it's also the positive. Like everything, you got to be very optimistic about how it goes. There'll be certain days that you feel things are not working well, but there's always the next day. So you just got to continue. You obviously got to work hard. And I think the Jumpstarter board is a very interesting thing, and it's also a very special thing, to be honest. It is a special school, to be honest. And I did spend a lot of my time from primary to high school there, and a lot of the bonds that we have are actually very strong. So, this is the best time to actually know because this is the time you know your friends in and out, right? Through the good and bad. It's very honest. And actually, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of this without the support of family and friends. Friends being Cempakans. That is why I also we started these companies together because I knew I could also, rely on them to support. It both goes backwards, goes forward and backwards, right? So at the end of the day, it's also very important that, we have that. I remember, in Cempaka last time, I think one of the talks, I think Frida did that, and we talked about, look at your left, look at your right, that kind of thing. I don't know if you know that, but yeah, these are guys that you will be there forever. And when I was very young at the time, I didn't really care, but now I'm like, okay, actually, network of people that you know and trust, or you play, doing recess and things like that, are actually very important. So take that in mind that this actually school time is a really great time, and I have such a mad respect for teachers for conveying all the experiences and things like that, and I really appreciate it because at the end of the day, it's also about values, right? And those are another things as well, right? We talk about Cempaka values and things like that. Yeah, it does show at the end of the day because you're going to make decisions, who you work with, even business decisions. You need to have a center in a way, right? And so it's important to have that backing. Yeah. So that's my Cempaka skill there.
Okay. By the way, Dr. Frida is actually watching. So if you just want
Oh
to
my
say,
god, nice to meet you. Yeah.
and lots of old
Yeah.
time as well, I think. So
That's amazing. Yes, I should come back to school more often, I think, but I didn't.
yeah, no,
Yeah, but I really miss it. Yeah, I really do. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we are kind of running out of time. I think we're okay with questions. Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Um, no, I'm just thank you so much for the opportunity to come back, even though it's virtually. The Cempaka is really part of is really part of what we are and things like that. And I would like to invite everyone to actually come over or take the opportunity to come out and see. The center is called the Mansion. We've actually got 9 centers and we're actually growing fast. But also to come and see the daycare just to experience what we are and also give some feedback. We love the contribution of ideas. Innovation is something that you cannot do by yourself. So let's work together to do that. Yeah, make the world better. Yeah, like a Michael Jackson song or something. Yeah, that's a
primary school in one of the conferences or something. Heal the world a long time ago.
Heal the world. Yes, yes. Well,
Yeah.
that's it. Being optimistic and changing the world. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and Dato says she's been, looking at this for a long time. She's also in this bracket, and perhaps, we're to meet up one day.
Would love to meet up. Yes, I would. That'd be great. To meet up. Thank you so much.
Okay. So thank you so much, Martin, for coming and, giving us a little bit of your time. It's a busy time and you guys are also always, pivoting and trying to continue to serve the environment, the community in, the best way that you can. So yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. This webinar will continue to be up. And yeah.
Great. I'm so excited about that. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and yes, and take care, definitely.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Great job. Keep it going. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.